is. And I thought that has multi-year leases. So it could be office, retail, warehouse, industrial.
Hello and welcome to the Masters of Real Estate. Today we are going to learn from Jeri Frank. So Jerry, how are you doing? Good to have you here.
Great. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And seems like you're joining us from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Is that right?
That is correct. That is correct.
Well, I'd love to visit Iowa someday, and as Cedar Rapids sounds like a great place. But Jerry, how do you introduce yourself to your target audience these days?
Yeah. So Stratafolio is focused on companies who own and manage commercial real estate. And what we mean by commercial real estate is anyone who owns an asset that has multi-year leases. So it could be office, retail, warehouse, industrial, mixed use, medical, and it's generally business to business types of relationships. And we integrate with QuickBooks.
Jerry, what feeling
Yeah.
do you love these days?
Yeah. One of the things that is most satisfying to me and to my entire team is when we are able to put our product in when it's complete, our customers are onboarded and they see their portfolio all together. They can access their data. They can answer questions at the drop of a hat, and they know they are making all of the revenue that is included in their leases. And that is an incredibly satisfying feeling for me and the entire team at Stratafolio.
I completely agree. There's something unique about seeing the delight on customers' faces when they see a completed
Mhm.
product. So let's get into Stratafolio and then we'll get more into your past and others later on. So, first of all,
Sure.
why did you name the company Stratafolio? What's the story behind that?
Yeah. It is incredibly hard to come up with the name of a company. I'll start by saying that. And we actually had a number of meetings and collaboration events where we came up with the name of the company. And really, when it came down to it, we started to think about what we do at Stratafolio and the stratas of data that we can put together. And so we look at things from a global perspective, and then we look at it at the entity level and at the asset level and the building level. And so there's different stratas of how you want to look at your data. But then it's also using Stratafolio allows you to be strategic in managing your portfolio. So really, it's a combination of those things that is how we came up with our name of the company.
So it seems like you focus on helping commercial real estate portfolio management. So can you walk us through how a typical end user feels when using your product and what pain points it solves for them?
hmm Yeah, so prior to reaching out, there's really three main reasons people reach out to us. One is they've missed a lease escalation. Two, they're missing managing their certificates of insurance for their tenants. And three, they are struggling with common area maintenance reconciliation or CAM. And it is one of those three reasons that generally people will reach out to us. So those are among the big things that we are solving for our customers. But really, what we're able to do is put control around their portfolio. I just had a conversation yesterday with someone who described it as right now their portfolio feels like and all of the different pieces of it feels like spaghetti in their brain. They can't pull it together. And what they want is waffles, where it's straight lines and a grid so that they can access and know where everything is. And I thought that was a really good explanation of the before and the after of what they get out of using Stratafolio. And so what we're doing is we're putting control in the hands of these owners and operators so they can see exactly how everything is performing financially. They know what's coming due next. They know who is going to have a renewal coming up, but everything is at their fingertips wherever they're at.
Fascinating, Jerry. So, for somebody who's never operated commercial real estate before, can you explain? Let's start with lease escalation. What does lease escalation mean?
Yeah. When a client and an owner collaborate, and that tenant will sign a lease. And in that lease, most of their leases are multiple years. So it could be a 3 year lease, a 5 year lease, 10 years, even a land lease could be 50 or 100 years. And every single year, generally, there will be a lease bump or an increase in what that base rent is. And so that escalation, though, is frequently missed by owners as they're managing their portfolio. It's a simple thing to happen. Most of our clients have tenants that they could be like a Walgreens or a CVS or some big box store, all the way down to mom and pop shop. And it is easy for everyone to think that all of those rent payments are going to come in and everybody is going to adhere to what the lease says the annual increase should be. But in reality, what happens is people forget. And even though everyone signed an agreement, it is easy to forget and keep paying that same rent amount. And it becomes awkward after a certain period of time if the tenant has continued to pay a certain amount and then that owner operator has not said, hey, you are paying the wrong amount. It just becomes difficult to go back and collect on that. And especially if you've been invoicing and it had the wrong amount on it.
Fascinating.
And yeah. And what we're finding is about 1 out of every 2 clients that we onboard, there's at least one missing lease escalation. And sometimes that dollar amount is fairly significant. Right now, with our customers that we're onboarding, they are able to recover, generally, are able to recover both the cost of the onboarding and the subscription in things that we have identified as true black and white lost revenue, where they could potentially go back and collect that revenue.
Fascinating. Fascinating. So, seems like, to summarize, lease escalation is management of 3 to many year leases that seem to be like legal contracts with increasing rents built into them, but managing them is frequently a pain point. And seems like almost 50% of the clients you're onboarding don't remember to increase rent collection, which is essentially their heart of the revenue in the business, on time. And
Correct.
Stratafolio solves that.
Correct.
What
Correct.
is
Yeah.
certificate of insurance, and what are the pain points there that Stratafolio solves?
Yeah, so certificates of insurance are a requirement, or insurance is a requirement of the tenants that are taking up that space. And generally, as part of that lease, there will be specific types of insurance that the tenant is supposed to have in place and a certain amounts. And the way it has worked in the past with many owners and operators is that they have a spreadsheet where at periodically they will go back and check to make sure that the tenants have provided them their most current certificate of insurance, which is a summarization of all of the policies, insurance policies that tenant has in place. And they get that certificate of insurance from their insurance provider. What happens, though, is tenants are often neglectful at providing that to the owners when that insurance is expiring. And the other thing that happens is, because different people are in different roles at those businesses, sometimes that tenant has changed staff, and the person who is supposed to be responsible forgets or doesn't do it. And it ends up being this back and forth between the owners and the tenants. And at some point in time, it just falls off, and then the tenants don't provide it. And so when we're onboarding, we will get the most current list of all of the certificates of insurance, and it's usually outdated, and not by a couple of months, sometimes fairly significant number of months. And the problem is, maybe they do have that insurance, that tenant has that insurance, but if they don't and something happens, there's a lawsuit, there's a disaster, then that owner is now culpable for some of those activities that could have transpired. So in the end, it's really a risk to that owner of that building if that tenant does not have the accurate insurance in place.
So seems like Stratafolio helps owners protect against major insurance claims by making sure their tenants are up to date on all the insurances they need to require and maintain.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. So we're tracking when those insurance policies expire. We are alerting those tenants that they need to provide that to the owner through the tenant portal. And then once those tenants upload their certificate of insurance, our built-in AI is going to read that certificate of insurance and then flag for that owner which policies may not be in alignment with what is required as part of the lease.
And Jerry, what is CAM reconciliation and what is CAM specifically?
Sure. So when a owner and a tenant sign a lease, most of the time, not always, but a lot of the time, it is a triple net lease, which means that tenant is responsible not only for base rent, but they're also responsible for the insurance, the taxes, and then the common area maintenance expenses of operating a space. So, for instance, when you look at a strip mall, maybe it has 4 tenants, and the tenants in that space are going to pay 2 types of rent every single month. They're going to pay their base rent, and then they're going to pay something else called additional rent or operating expenses. It comes under a variety of names, but it is the triple net of that building. So if those tenants are each 25% of that space, they will each pay their pro rata percentage of what it costs to operate that building. So the lighting in the parking lot, I'm in Iowa, so maybe there's snow that has to be taken care of. There's landscaping, plus there's insurance and taxes and property management. And at a high level, that seems very simple. If it was they're each 25% and they each all agree to the same terms in their lease. What complicates things is that every lease is a different negotiation. So different things are included in what can or cannot be included in common area maintenance expenses. So when you're doing common area maintenance reconciliation, you have to take into account not only the space, but each separate set of rules that has been agreed to. And you have to do this very close after the first of the year. That's your best time to do it. And where people struggle is if they don't have clean books and they have to do this manually, it can take a significant amount of time to produce these common area maintenance reconciliations because you have a budget for the year and then you're reconciling to the actual expenses. And then you're either giving the tenant a credit or you're charging them for what that difference was. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So seems like, when somebody buys a commercial real estate, they tend to sign these long-term leases where tenants have to not just pay rents over multiple years with escalations, tenants have to maintain insurance, and tenants also have to pay taxes and other common area maintenance expenses. And because
Mm-hmm.
of the complexity of these long-term leases, there is a lot of operational overhead that
Mm-hmm.
seems to accrue on owners of commercial real estate that
Mm-hmm.
tends to if managed ineffectively tends to result in lost revenue from not collecting a higher rent, or tends to result
Mm-hmm.
in insurance exposure if tenants are not up to date on their insurance, or tends to result in miscalculations in how much they should collect for maintaining common areas, which seems to be a variable expense every year. And
Mm-hmm.
if somebody owns commercial real estate, whether it's offices or whether it's medical, or whether it's retail, which essentially means malls and other kinds of real estate, or other types, they are better off getting onboarded on Stratafolio to make sure they can collect the right amount of money collect increasing amounts of money every year and protect themselves against
Mhm.
natural hazards.
Correct. Yeah, I would exactly agree with that. And what we see, there's one thing about making sure you're collecting your base rent all but on time. What we see is as we onboard customers or clients, we see that they have not done CAM reconciliation quickly after the start of the year, or they have assumed it was just a 3% increase from the previous year. And the mistake of that is, as we're seeing, expenses have gone up more than 3%. Insurance has certainly gone up more than 3%. Taxes may or may not have gone up more than 3%. But if you just assume that that has always gone up 3%, you are actually just eating into your own bottom line. Those are extra dollars that you could have used, that should have been your revenue. The goal is that whatever your insurance, taxes, and operating expenses, you're going to recover all of that. And if you're just assuming it's a 3% flat increase, you are probably leaving some money on the table, and you, as the owner operator, are eating that. And that becomes compounded over time if there is a cap involved. So we recommend that you do CAM reconciliation early in the year, so the tenant knows exactly what they may have to come up with and what the additional expenses might be for the next year. Because you're doing your tenant a disservice as well if you do not finish CAM reconciliation until June, and you have them pay for a shortage from the previous year, and then a catch-up payment, and then an increased rate for the rest of the year. So it's not a good tenant owner relationship when that kind of thing happens.
Makes sense, Jerry. For someone listening to this that owns exposure in commercial real estate and is trying to do property management themselves, how should they reach out to you and your team?
Yeah. So they can find us at stratafolio.com, or they can reach out to me personally at Jeri, Jeri, at stratafolio.com.
And Jerry, once they reach out to you, like, and assuming they want to proceed very quickly, how,
Mm-hmm.
what is the best way to work with you and your team, and how quickly can they expect to see results?
Yeah. So we go through an onboarding process. So I start everything with a demo of our product to understand what they're doing and where they're having issues. Because I want to make sure that the product that we have is going to suffice for what they're currently experiencing. So we integrate with QuickBooks, both desktop and online, and we focus on those commercial real estate assets. So if somebody comes into us and they don't use QuickBooks and they have 200 single family homes, we're probably not the best solution, and I will tell them that. Where we focus is commercial real estate, multi-year leases, and people who own and manage commercial real estate using QuickBooks. So I go through that demo activity, understanding really what's going on. I price it out for them. They have then the opportunity to sign on with Stratafolio. And when we do that, we do a full service onboarding. And we do a full service onboarding because early on, when we did a beta product, what we figured out was that the type of client that we're working with, they often are wearing many, many hats. And even though they want to get organized and get everything set up and cleaned up and ready to go, they're wearing so many different hats, they don't have time to focus on getting this done. So we do a full service onboarding. Our onboarding staff are accountants, they're QuickBooks pro advisors, they know commercial real estate. So when we go through that onboarding activity, we have everyone provide their leases, their loans, their COIs, their previous CAM reconciliations, amendments, estoppels, anything that helps us understand what is going on in their portfolio. We ask for that information. And then we have a series of meetings where we go through and integrate with their QuickBooks and then start building out their portfolio and asking questions when we see disconnects.
Absolutely, Jerry. So seems like you're really enjoying this feeling of helping clients, make more money and charge the right kind of money as well as protect themselves against risks. But let's
Mhm.
go all the way back to zero before all of this. What are some of the inflection points that led to what you're doing today?
Yeah, so I was previously in education. So I used to work at a company that was tested across the United States and Canada. Pearson was the name of the company. And then my husband worked in the aerospace industry, and he was a senior software systems engineer. And we were taking bonuses and buying real estate. And every month we were redoing a spreadsheet to see how our assets were producing. And, we worked very busy jobs that were more than 40 hours a week. And so we were looking for an efficient way to manage things. And it just became this catalyst to see how should things be managed? What software do we have as an option to manage things? And became this discovery process of analyzing what was out there, what solutions existed, what the price points were. And it ended up in us going through an accelerator in Iowa and then working with some local real estate owners in the commercial side. And we quickly realized that this was a huge need on that commercial side, somewhat on the residential, but the commercial side had the same problems. It was just at a bigger scale. And because of the scale and the complexity and the lack of products in the space, we decided to really focus on commercial real estate.
So it seems like you and your husband are involved in starting this business together and have a history of working together. Most people who try to do
Mhm.
it with their better half, including myself, 15 years ago, don't end up being very successful. So, what are some of the secrets of figuring out how to run a startup or a business with your better half or your loved ones?
Yeah. 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 Well, first off, I would say the huge benefit of working with your spouse is that, especially if you're a workaholic, uh, you're in it together. And in the past, there may have been guilt that, I was busy doing my other job, and you feel like you're taking away from the family. But when you're both owners of the business and you both understand why you're doing it, and we're partners in the activity, we divide up the work, but obviously we talk all the time about why are we doing this, why are we doing that, and there has to be some give and take. But it is, we both appreciate why we are each doing it and why we are each committed to it. And neither of us are, we are both workaholics, and neither of us are give up on anything. So we are well suited to running a business.
That's amazing, Jerry. And how do you balance discussions or thoughts about work versus your personal life? As an entrepreneur, I think about work all the time, and I really enjoy not thinking about it when I'm with my wife and kids. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I would say it's not balanced. I would honestly say it is not balanced. We work, as founders of a company, you work a lot of hours, and it is never far from our minds. I aspire to have balance at some point in time, but it's at this point where we're at, it's about getting it right and, getting the word out and continuing to get the word out about Stratafolio and the help that we provide our customer base. So I have no advice in terms of balance except for make sure you get your workout in, try to eat well, because if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And that is something that we do focus on a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking care of physical and mental health has exponential returns of business. Jerry, we are about 70% of the way through the year. It's mid-August when we are recording this. What is Stratafolio's main goal for the year, and how are you
Mhm.
progressing towards it?
Yeah. Our main goal for this year was really to start going to more conferences focused on accounting or accountants. In the past, what we have really focused on was going after that individual owner operator And now that we have clients across the United States and Canada, we realize, okay, now we have all of that base built. Now we're going to start focusing on the relationships with firms that service commercial real estate, because now that gives us a channel to more clients more quickly. And so that has been our focus from January on, and we're seeing some really good results with that. Establishing some good relationships with accountants that can support our client base as well. It is not uncommon for us to talk to a client and they will ask us, who can I work with that knows and understands commercial real estate, so that they can go to that accountant or that bookkeeper and get some assistance.
Completely agree, Jerry. And now let's talk about the future. So, you talk to a lot of owner operators of commercial real estate. You talk to a lot of service providers in commercial real estate, especially accountants. And I'm sure you don't have time to analyze all the numbers, but you have a high level understanding of how the industry is doing right now. So, if you now think about the future in the next 5 to 10 years, what do you anticipate about commercial real estate that few others are seeing today?
Yeah, actually, I was just having a conversation with a VC firm, and what they had shared with me was were expecting 2024 to be kind of a rough year in terms of real estate transactions and just the industry, excuse me, in general, because of the interest rates. But they have not seen it to be necessarily that way. And my point to them was, what we are seeing is that the wealth transition that is happening is changing what's going on. So, when you watch the news or read the papers, you hear about office vacancy. And that's true. There are issues in some locations. There's a lot of locations that's not the case. Miami, it's not that way. We have a lot of customers in Florida and Texas. They're buying office spaces. But there's also shifting spaces. So, as people have started to work more remote and they've moved out, well, there's been this addition of strip malls in more locations. That happens to be a very popular asset class within our portfolio. And we are seeing that wealth transition, that 90 trillion, 110 trillion, whatever number you're reading, that is actively underway. And much of that wealth is in real estate. And those family offices, a lot of that, they're not over leveraged. And so this is a prime time for them to continue to grow. So we are still seeing a lot of activity in this space.
So seems like what you're saying is there's a lot of wealth locked up by 60 plus year olds and it's 80 plus year olds that is going to these 30, 40, 50 year olds. And while that is happening, it's mostly equity. It's not a lot of debt. So they have a lot of room to re-leverage or extract more debt from these assets and use that to buy more exposure. And in terms of buying more exposure, you're seeing these institutional real estate investors or family offices seem to be bullish on Texas and Florida, even in offices. And it seems like what you're saying is retail strip malls, which are these one floor structures with a parking,
Correct.
Are also on the rise in terms of acquisitions.
Correct. And industrial, which is probably not surprising to everyone, because there is a lot more online shopping. So industrial has been a big asset class as well.
And when you say industrial, when people can visualize offices and retail because they interact with those, but most people can't visualize industrial. So how do you help them see that?
Yeah. So when you think about, if you go to Amazon and you are buying a product from Amazon, that product is probably sitting in an industrial warehouse somewhere, and it's getting moved then to be shipped out.
Yeah, and now you can imagine as a listener that the volume of e-commerce is growing, and so is the need for more warehouses across the country.
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
So let me ask you some rapid fire questions to coach listeners. What is the most common mistake you see others in your industry making?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the most common mistake that we see is people are managing fairly significant size portfolios, 10, 20, 30, 40, $50 million of a portfolio in spreadsheets. And that is dangerous in so many ways. It is very hard to train somebody. It is very easy to make a mistake, and it is very easy to lose money because that mistake has been made. If you have 5 units, it's probably not a big deal. If you have 10, 15, 20, you need you need something to help protect yourself from mistakes that you could make that'll cost you significantly.
Absolutely, Jay. And if your loved ones agree to be mentored by you, what's the most important skill you would teach them?
Yeah, I think that that skill is just continuing to move on, dig in, don't give up. As long as you are moving forward and learning from what you've done in the past, that's what you need to continue to do. Um, as entrepreneurs, we're confronted with complex things all the time, and sometimes they can be quite daunting. Take a step back, look at it, analyze it a couple of different ways, make a decision, and keep moving forward. Um, just have the conviction that you have a product and there is a way to solve the problem. But keep moving forward.
Keep moving forward. Love that. That was Jeri Frank, the co-founder and CEO of Stratafolio. If you own tens of millions of dollars of commercial real estate or are helping someone manage the accounting side of tens of millions of dollars of commercial real estate, you should definitely reach out to them at stratafolio.com, or send them ping to Jerry directly at jeri@stratafolio.com. If you want to talk about real estate anytime, send me a note on nick at home.llc. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.